Well, hello, hello, hello. So I think we had a great introduction. Everybody knows what they're here for, and we're going to have a very fruitful discussion about me, myself, and generative AI. Here with me, I have an optimist, a pessimist, and a realist to have this discussion, to look at the topic from all kinds of angles. They all have somehow background in tech, whether engineers or in cultural studies and excitement in the technology. And then at the same time, from entrepreneurs to venture builders or leading very big technology foundations. So I will briefly introduce my guests here. I've got Cristina there to the left, your side, a general partner at the moment, entrepreneur twice, exited her companies, and now running the Indigo Capital Partners. Kanu Gulati, who is actually a PhD and engineer as well, and now from the Bay Area, running the Khosla Ventures. Mark Zusman, who is the Executive Director of Mozilla Foundation, and worked with Firefox, very much special care on online privacy and trustworthy AI. And now exciting news as well to share with us today. So, how can we start and frame the conversation for everybody here? I mean, AI has been hyped more and more over the years. I mean, of course, we went through some winters. There's been, let's say, from 80s, like for the ones that have been around for a long time, that know it's been always AI is coming, and AI maybe it's finally here. We can see it by how there's mass adoption and actually excitement to create your own AI, like use your imagination, and with DALL-E create your own little fiction of fantasy, and people are sharing it on social media, so we can see there's been hyped and hyped. So I would like to, let's say, open this discussion and have each one of you tell me a little bit about, well, what do you think are the tools that actually have led now to this hype, and how can you, what are you most excited about?
Am I going first?
Go for it.
All right. You have to guess if I'm the pessimist, the optimist, or the pragmatist. So yeah, hi, I'm Mark, and we've actually taken a big part of what Mozilla is doing on the foundation side, which I lead, and focused on this concept of trustworthy AI over the last few years, which to us means AI that both has accountability built into how it's designed, but also that gives human agency, that we have control, choice, awareness over what's going on. And I think it's true, when we started that work a few years ago, it was still like, is AI a kind of hypey thing? And it is less so as we see things like DALL-E come out and people can kind of like feel the AI-ness of it. But actually, even, as probably everyone in this room knows, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, AI was already pervasive in every product that is around us, in our phones, in our spell checkers, in our devices in our homes. And we really committed to Mozilla in figuring out how do we actually build trust into that system. Make sure that the stack that people use to build products that include AI is trustworthy. And one of the things we actually came to a conclusion about is not only for us to advocate for that, not only for us to start to build that subtly into products like Firefox and how Firefox does search, but also to look for companies that are trying to do that. So today we announced Mozilla Ventures, which is why I end up on a venture stage, really looking for companies focused on building that trustworthy AI stack or building consumer products with a trustworthy AI focus.
Great. Thank you for that. Hi, I'm Kanu Gulati. I'm a partner at Khosla Ventures. We have $15 billion under management and a current main fund of $1 billion and a separate seed fund north of $300 million. And we look at multiple areas of investments, but AI is one of our priorities. To your question on why now, like what is the tool that's changed? So, AI has been popular because of the more data, more compute, more capability in general. But essentially for generative AI, it has been an emergent behavior that we've seen that by increasing the models of really large size, so very large parameters, and being trained on large amounts of data are actually doing really, really well, both for languages, but then also for visuals, so images and video. And that quality, and we don't really understand why it generalizes so well, but that particular emergent behavior has made it super, super exciting. And for a variety of industries, for consumers, for prosumers, for enterprises, playing with languages, visual, multimodal. And so I think there's a ton of opportunity in all of these industries, and happy to chat more about it.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Cristina Fonseca. I'm a local. I'm based here in Lisbon, Portugal, and I'm a partner at Indico. I actually started my career in tech as an entrepreneur. And I would say what I'm most excited about AI these days is the fact that with the large language models and the latest advancements, we can democratize access to AI. So in the last 10 years, if we think about the AI applications that we all learned to use, they were like recommendation systems, like translation at scale in social networks, or Google Photos, image classification. So these vertical applications of AI have been available, and we would not know how to live without YouTube history, for example. But only big tech companies had the computing power and the resources and the money to invest in these types of solutions. With these large language models, suddenly I have a baseline that I can use to deploy AI in multiple languages. So the Europeans don't need to start only by applying AI to English-based solutions or systems. So I think I'm super, super excited that these foundation and all these initiatives that big corporations, big foundations are appearing. They are enabling that from SMBs to big corporates are starting to use AI and deploying AI in their internal solutions. I'm a big believer that in the next 10 years, I think every single person will have an AI assistant that will be able to help them be better at their job and replace just the manual work, the things that are very repetitive. I would love to have an assistant that can help me offload that piece of the work to AI so I can focus on value-added creative tasks.
So basically making our life easier, and there's going to be mass adoption, and everybody will be using AI. I mean, we were just laughing before and joking, essentially now I'm here on stage with my phone, which without it, I will forget my keys, but I won't forget my phone, right? I will go out of the house without my keys, but my phone is my extension. So that would be how AI assistants would be like. And as you mentioned, it's because of these large databases, the large opportunities of having multi-party computation, a lot of different languages to use. It just creates more and more excitement. But at the same time, going back to Mark, how can we make sure that we maintain our privacy? So you mentioned before, and congratulations, that today you launched and announced that you're going to have a venture fund and you're going to be investing. So what kind of companies will you be looking at and why?
Well, I think I agree we're going to have those assistants, and it's probably a place we would look for companies, but with a particular lens of who would you trust to be the vendor for your system? Or what would you need to actually feel that somehow that's under your control? Is Amazon or Google or Facebook going to provide your assistant? Do you trust them to? Or will we find companies that really emerge, or maybe nonprofits, with that idea of a particular independence, a particular trust proposition? And so that's the kind of companies we'll be looking for, that can stay independent, that are focused on trustworthy AI or trustworthy use of decentralized tech, and can shift how the ecosystem behaves. Very, very basic example. Well, one of the first 3 companies, not AI-driven, that we invested in is called Block Party, which helps manage online harassment in places like Twitter. Imagine if you took that all the way to the extreme, the Block Party became that agent and actually is allowing me to exist in a space that I feel, I'm expressing my values automatically of where I want to interact, who I want to interact with, who I trust, whether I think that is synthetic media or a real person. So I think we're looking for people who will be leaders in those kinds of spaces.
So essentially generative AI plus values equals best opportunities.
And there's a lot of money to be made there, if I'm honest, to founders out there. We're moving into a place where generative AI and the regulatory environment are about to crash into each other. Here in Europe, we're having a big debate about whether general purpose AI will fall under the EU AI Act. And if it does, and I think in some version of that will happen, the question of, is your company ready to be able to prove that it's trustworthy, is not going to just be a matter of market differentiator, it's going to be a matter of law.
So Kanu, actually, I would love to hear from your perspective, what is the most impressive example of generative AI you've seen so far, and why?
Yeah, so let me take a step back. I think there are two classes of companies that will exist, startups that emerge. One will be companies that provide the foundational models themselves. An example of that is OpenAI, and we are investors in that. And there will be more of those companies that provide the underlying foundational models. And then there will be a class of companies that understand the user of a particular application, the persona, extremely well, understand their workflow and their context really well, and know how to use these foundation models in a very smart, efficient way in that workflow. And either of those can be very large opportunities. I think there'll be a lot more of these end applications, but there the founder has to have some certain very clear domain knowledge on how to really win the customer there.
So basically horizontal and vertical, is
Yes.
that what you're saying?
Yes. To your question on trust and how there might be a crash, yes, we all want, and it's an important topic to discuss, we all want transparency and fairness in all of our applications and everywhere we interact with technology. But I also think it will be stifling innovation if we try to create these acts and enforce them on startups at this stage. Like, we are so early in what these solutions could look like and how these interfaces will be designed and which applications can be automated to what level. They're trying to be, okay, this is the regulatory raw today. By just knowing what we know today will, I think, will handicap us.
So what's the question again? Sorry.
Because we might get into that debate.
I got engaged in the conversation.
We sidetracked. But to be honest, trust is a very important topic and can be seen from different angles. And actually, I think from your side, Cristina, you made a very good point about trust before when we were from a different angle of perspective. So maybe you can reiterate that and feel that.
In regards to trust, I would say one of the biggest challenges right now, and I'll just use an example from my area. So I built 2 companies in customer service. And customer service is where there's just so much manual work. So it's a very obvious application of AI, to reduce the amount of manual work that humans need to perform. But even if I have the best piece of technology, the best assistant to help call center agents be more productive, you go to them and they're like, well, you're giving me this thing, but I can already see this can replace a piece of the job that I do. So I don't want to trust the system, I don't want to know. That's what's happening. But then there's the other angle, which is think about new people coming into the job, working remotely, not being properly onboarded. Their best chance is to have that assistant that can help them become really good at their job. So I think we are kind of in a transition period where people first are a little bit skeptical in regards to how AI can help them be better. But then once you understand the benefits, and in certain situations you'll realize, well, I have no other option. I really have no other option other than deflect these repetitive work to a machine and focus on value-added tasks. So I believe we have a challenge, in the B2B and in the consumer space, of embedding AI into the applications that we use, keeping the human in the loop as much as possible during this transition. One, to help train the AI, to supervise and make sure, we embed these trustworthy and ethical aspects of it. But keeping the human will help not only build trust, but also build the right systems.
So basically, what I think is interesting here with the word trust is that we examine it from a privacy perspective. So how can we create systems of trust so that there is trust in the system? But then we also examine it from a human element of how can the human trust the system so that we actually use it to our benefit and to make our life and manual labor much easier and faster. So back to the generative AI, which has been the spark of this conversation, I would love to hear from you, what has been the most interesting examples of generative AI you've seen, and what kind of stuff are you mostly excited about the future, go wild and sci-fi on this?
I'm happy to start. I think that the demo from OpenAI that blew my mind was when you could type in natural language and make an edit to a frame and say, okay, make this frame bigger, make this frame smaller, make this picture turn. You could just type it in natural language, and I think it's going to make, of course, we all know about Copilot, the GitHub, autocomplete, but that capability is just going to get more and more powerful. in writing code snippets, is writing documentation, all of the parts of the code that you don't want to do, like the more regular run-of-the-mill code that you have to write can just be automatically written, and you don't have to be very expert coders anymore. Natural language to code conversion is going to be a real thing. That was very, very exciting.
So I'll share an example which I think is quite cool, and 10 years ago, like, would not be possible. So I have a friend that works, whose job is to write content, and now what he does is, like, he focuses on the creative aspect of writing content, just produces the briefs, and give the briefs to, like, the OpenAI machine and say, get me a blog post.
Yes.
And then it just reviews the thing. So, like, this is quite
Prompt
impressive,
engineering
you
is
know?
going to be a real job now. Yes.
So think about, like, in the future, like, writing content, and, like, I think we'll all have bots, right, that will consume the information that we have available, and will not search anymore within documents. So I think, like, to me, this is the coolest example I can think of. And it gives us a little bit of a sneak peek into what the potential will be in the future.
I guess that I might do a nerdy, I mean, those are the kind of examples that catch my attention too. Maybe a more nerdy example in the background of, like, how it was made is Hugging Face, who I mentioned earlier, which is in the natural language processing space, released their multilingual, I think they call it the largest multilingual natural language processing, big, large language model that exists, called Bloom. And what's impressive about that is that it's the biggest collective AI research project that, again, they claim has ever existed, and is focused towards multilingualism. And I think that the potential of these large language models to actually help us communicate, to be like the babblefish in our ear, we're headed in that way anyways, but I think to imagine being able to talk across cultures in a way that, in the case of Bloom, is open source, is contributed by thousands of researchers, and that we can all use to build off, that is a kind of much more exciting version of the babblefish than ever I imagined when reading Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Yes, I mean, again, I can see how all of these different things can be very exciting, and they can, it did not exist in before. But I mean, with the current infrastructure, the current industry, let's say, the fact that we have the current tech giants, we're moving from one web generation to the next web generation, and things that they were a norm, like now were not a norm before, like creating your own content with Assistant, mind-blowing. You have someone else doing your job, having an open AI, having open source tools to actually play around with. Do you think that we currently have the tools to move to the next phase?
I guess it depends. We might all have different ideas of the next phase.
I'm just super impressed by the pace at which work is being done around generative AI in multimodal, in making these systems faster, scale better. Stability is a great example of just being able to parallelize these models and keep the image quality still high enough. Yeah, just the pace of this is so inspiring that, yes, there'll be more and more, you're calling them tools, but more models being generated and more applications being proven. That makes me very optimistic about this space.
Look, like, I think the pace is incredible, and I think then, when the tech capabilities align with businesses, I think that's where we will start to see applications, making it to the real world. Because, there's lots of, good examples of applications that can already be deployed within software, B2B software, for example, there's lots of them. And I believe in the next 10 years, every single piece of software will have to have intelligence embedded. No one will want to buy, dumb software, as we created 10 years ago. So AI will be a big differentiator there. And I think the industry will that's why everything is moving so fast. Because, the industry is also demanding and investing a lot to make it happen.
Right, we were saying, you want to add something?
No, and I was just saying, I think that's the point, is that it will be inside of everything. I mean, the AI and data are the programming languages of now, just like the web and the network were 20 years ago.
Yeah, the next Figma, the next Adobe, the next Microsoft Office suite is going to be an AI-first solution, and no one has figured out exactly what that interface, the human and AI interaction, is going to look like, but that is why the space is so exciting, because some of those companies haven't even started today.
And then we can't even necessarily imagine what those things are. If you think back when we first had Ajax and the web as a real programming environment, 20 years ago, nobody really imagined Facebook. Nobody really imagined that Google would become dominant in, move into documentation. All of the things that have happened on the web, so many of them we couldn't have imagined. And I think that's where we're actually like in the early 2000s of this new programming environment.
I mean, some skeptics will say, just to touch a little bit the critic side of the panel, let's say that AI, it's a buzzword, right, that is being used right now to raise funding more, and that essentially it's a hype. So do you actually say that these applications qualify as AI, or are we moving towards an AI space?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting. When Mozilla started talking about what's our position on AI, we got into this whole debate, is it just a hypey word, does it mean anything? And I kind of quite deeply feel it doesn't matter. Like, yes, we have machine learning, yes, we have things that are large language models, yes, we have a lot of automation that is generative. As long as we are all roughly talking about a set of things that is evolving, it's a useful term. And I think that stuff is real. People are building companies on it now.
Yeah, this is different. I mean, so there are multiple versions of machine learning and AI in the past. Like the previous generations of AI were more around predicting a model, so telling you, if you're using it for a recommendation engine or my customer churn behavior, it would just predict whether your model, next customer churn would happen. Or they were classifiers, like classifying an image, it's a cat or a dog. With generative AI, it's just a different model. It's creating content from scratch. It's just a different angle of power that it comes with. So I actually don't think it's hype anymore. Like that, this is yes, there is noise around it, but I still think what's going to come, it's going to just continue to blow us away.
So as an investor, I hate when companies come to me and say, I am an AI company. Like, I absolutely hate that, because that's not what will determine if you're going to make it or not, right? Like I think it's a buzzword that's very common these days, but I think everyone that's developing AI systems needs to focus on what's the value that's creating for me or my ecosystem. So I that's my preferred way of approaching the topic is what's the value, right? Rather than, I have AI, so this is very special. 10 years ago, we were probably here talking about mobile. And now,
soon it will be metaverse.
Exactly.
And I guess last question, just to, let's say, from looking from now to the future, you mentioned before, Mark, about no one imagined Facebook, no one imagined Google, no one can actually see what the future is, but which one of those tech giants, I would say, would you say they're best equipped for this new AI generated future, AI assistant-oriented future? Are they any, or are we making it?
Which one of the tech giants is best equipped?
Are we expecting the next tech giant? I guess that's my question.
If I take the question of which one is best equipped, hopefully none of them, although they certainly control the field. But I do think there's an opportunity for both democratization and for new dominant players, whether that OpenAI or Hugging Face become the next AWS, which is the infrastructure part of it, or companies who are building personal assistants actually become the next version of us being in a social world. I think we haven't seen those companies, or if we see them, it looks like somebody making DALL-E, not somebody running all the infrastructure of the digital world, but those opportunities are there. And I think the key for us, we hope, is that a set of them are open source and focused on trust. The regulatory environment, whether we want it or not, is here, and I think the public demand for something trustworthy is here.
I think the existing giants are well equipped to continue marching along in the space. These teams that are actually building the the Imagen or the DALL-E solution, etc., or releasing from Facebook the OPD 175. These teams are not very large, but they've figured out how to do it, and they'll continue doing it. So I don't think there's anything, structurally, fundamentally, that these tech giants wouldn't continue advancing in this space. But I also think there is an opportunity for startups, new startups, to emerge, just because the space is so new for everyone, and this is so much the foundation models and using them for different applications, for different end persona, for different modalities, and moving quicker, more agile, faster than these tech giants. Like that's the opportunity. And but there will be, I think, possible to have like 10 billion plus companies in this space.
The opportunity is so big that I believe there's space for everyone.
Space for everyone, building trustworthy products, open source, hopefully, and trust in general. And I think the time is up. Thank you so much.
Thank you.